Hey guys!
What's up? Welcome to Violet and Lucy's awesome, amazing AP Gov podcast.
Thank you for joining us today. Today, we will be discussing a Google form,
Our public poll.
our public poll. So, why did we pick this topic?
We chose this topic because we wanted to see how politically knowledgeable the Miller School students were.
The results will shock you.
Yes, they will.
So, how did we conduct our research?
We sent out a Google form to randomly selected students, 30% of each grade to be exact, and made sure that they filled out the form.
We told them relentlessly, fill out the form or we will find you.
And somehow we still had people who didn't do it.
6 to be exact.
All right, in our next section, we will have 2 faculty guests.
One.
It'll get spicy.
It'll get spicy.
All right, watch and enjoy.
Have a great time, you guys.
Hey.
All right. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. We have Christopher Chilella on our right, and we have Thomas Spivey on our left. Thank you all for coming here today.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Of course. Today, we will be discussing the results of a poll that took place of the Miller School community last week.
The poll explored demographics throughout Miller, such as gender, grade, age, and day or boarding students, and it measured how politically knowledgeable the student body is.
First, we will be going off by presidential candidate chosen. We have the top 3 in front of you right here. So the top 3 answers were Trump, Biden, and no answer. So first, we will be going off by Trump.
All right, so our guests have already looked through this data, so we're not going to go through every answer to the questions, but out of all of the questions answered, students answered 39.7% of their ideology questions that matched Trump's ideology, and 60.3% of their answers did not match Trump's ideology. What do you guys think this says about the student body?
I think it says more about Trump than anything else. Not too many people would match with Trump's ideology. What excites them is his anger
Very good answer. Thank you for answering.
and his celebrity status.
I agree. And Christopher, what does that say? What does that say to you?
I have to agree with Mr. Spivey. I think when you're comparing the ideological parallel between Trump and Biden, for example, the top 2, you have 60.3 did not match Trump's ideology, and only 14.2 did not match Biden's ideology. So it's clear that a Trump supporter, I think Trump's celebrity status sort of both is positive for them and negative for them because they don't always align with his ideology.
Now, do you think that students' parents would have something to do with these answers not matching up?
The number one determining factor of a political party is the political party of your parentage.
That's true. On the other hand, young people tend to be more liberal than older people. And I think at this point, I think that effect of your parents on your political views tends to manifest itself a little bit later in life.
I completely agree. In fact, it speaks to our community when you bring up the third piece of data that we're given, in that actually the biggest answer was no answer. And I think that's absolutely appropriate for your age group because it means that you understand and acknowledge that you haven't maybe done all the reading you have to make a very responsible decision like voting.
All right, so moving on to that no answer category, 77.9% was left or liberal ideology and 22.07% was right or conservative ideology. So what do we think it says about the student body that more people are agreeing with the left or liberal ideology and saying they don't know?
Well, first of all, you have to understand that Donald Trump is not a conservative. Donald Trump is a populist. A lot of the same people who voted for Bernie Sanders in the primaries in 2016 actually voted for Donald Trump in the general election. So, this is not the conservative party that I remember from the 1980s. I think Ronald Reagan is spitting in his grave like a top at what the Republican Party has become. It's a populist party. It's not conservative.
I couldn't agree more. Certainly. I think, but it also just not to bring up where we live. With a day population that is increasing here at Miller, I think you see a relative representation of the community of a college town.
All right, so if you flip, we have some raw results from our survey, which are just the two graphs based on what presidential candidates the students would choose and what local candidates they would be most likely to vote for.
What, to you, does it say about the Miller School community and the future of our country that over half of the sample population does not know enough about the presidential candidates?
Gives me a lot of hope in the future because it means they're able to say when they do not know instead of making up something on the spot.
Well, that's true, but also I think the fact they have no opinion is not a good sign. I mean, I guess I come from a different place in a different era than Mr. C, but when I was young, by the time I was 15 or 16 years old, I was pretty interested in politics. Now that's partly because my family was interested in politics and my friends were interested in politics. But yeah, I remember, I remember that in 1980, I can't remember back that far, I was 15 years old and I supported Ronald Reagan.
What does it say about the Miller School community and the future of our country that over 90% of the sample population doesn't know enough about our state representatives?
This is where I jump on board with Mr. Spivey and say that is exactly the troubling thing that I think he mentioned just now. What you have, I think, is a nonchalance and a possible comfort level in today's society that has allowed us to remain complacent when it comes to knowledge about politics and knowledge about how much that could impact our future.
Yeah, people pay less attention to their congressperson than they do to than say the presidential election. And while only 11% of Americans say they're satisfied with Congress, most people are fine with their own representative, perhaps because they know so little about him. I don't know how many people in the 5th District actually realize that Robert Good is an
ultra mega,
ultra Trump,
Yes.
like far obstructionist type of legislator. I mean, he's like one of the most MAGA friendly people in the House right now.
So we're going to move on to...
Also, Bob Good came in and stole the primary from him based on a MAGA platform, and that is exactly what is pushing the polarization of this country.
So moving on to demographics by gender, we have the female and male survey results. So the female category shares 88.6% left or liberal ideology, and the male shares 66.2% left or liberal ideology. Why do we think there's a disparity between these two?
Women traditionally tend to be more liberal than men. It's called the gender gap. It's something that the Republicans have struggled with for decades. I'm not sure. If you ask most women what their number one priority is, they say the safety of their family, and then after that, the economic stability of their family. I don't know if that has any bearing on this or not.
Okay, and then kind of going off of what you just said, could the population being mainly male identifying change the results? And if so, how would it change those results?
What do you mean by mainly male? What's the demographic
Oh,
split?
The Miller
60%.
community.
Is it 60% male?
Yes.
I think that could definitely influence it.
Is there any way that specifically that you can see how it would influence it?
Go ahead.
I'm not gonna. I don't know. I'm not gonna answer
Okay,
that.
I'm
not gonna venture there.
Okay,
That's
well,
all good.
you're probably braver than I am because I will venture there.
Or less
I
brave.
mean, well, it is possible that if you look at why men are more likely to vote conservative than women are, or vote Republican than women are, some of it has to do with the fact that men are perhaps a little bit more aggressive. All right, and I think certainly you know, a candidate like Donald Trump would appeal to aggressive males. He would also appeal to aggressive females, all right, unless they are, you know, aggressively left wing. But I think it, you know, I think some of it has to do with testosterone. Some of it.
I agree. I think that's a factor. I also think that I think with not to bring up a very polarizing issue, but I think abortion is something that is on the right to women's bodies is something that is certainly on the table here.
That's a good point.
I believe that they want autonomy over their bodies, and they don't want a bunch of old men telling them what to do with that body.
All right, now if you want to flip through the demographics by grade, we have it split 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th, and pie graph showing the percentage of right or conservative versus liberal or leftist ideologies.
While you flip through that, you can see at the very top, it was our smallest demographic of the grades, but it is the highest percent of left or liberal ideologies. As we scroll down, the percentage of right or conservatives does get a bit larger, but then when we go back to the 11th graders and then the seniors, it does get smaller. What do we think that says about the different ages and grades in the Miller School community?
I think it follows a really common pattern that the older people get, the more conservative they get. And that continues until you die.
While I hesitate to agree with Mr. Spivey, I agree with that statement, and I think it's statistically provable. I think a lot of these discussions, especially like an 8th grade talking to a 12th grader, like you're talking about an 8th grader who's not voting to a 12th grader who is voting. And I think the more thought you put into your vote, the more honor you give it, the more you sort of receive fulfillment from taking part in the process. And that part of that process is reading and work and listening and listening and listening and listening.
What does it say to you that only 2 grades filled out the form completely?
It confirms what I've seen in my government classes. Students at this particular school, maybe it's students in general, said we have no interest in politics.
Would it change your mind that those 2 grades were the 8th grade and the senior class?
I think 8th graders are still, because of where they are in their lives, and I've taught them for a lot of years, they tend to be more open in their curiosity, so maybe they've listened a little bit more, or maybe they've read a little bit more, or maybe they've, you know, been more open to things. 12th graders, I think, a lot of them have had at least a semester with me, and they are closer to voting, as Mr. C keeps pointing out. They're going to have some skin in the game pretty soon.
Yeah, skin in the game, I think, is something that makes us all old and skeptical. You know what I mean? When you got risk, I think there's a skepticism that goes along with risk. I think younger people tend to engage more in like the wonder aspect, and the older people tend to engage more in the skepticism aspect, and both need to be part of the conversation.
That's a great way to put it.
Thank you, Tom.
One question before our last and final question. What do we think it says about certain students that we had 6 students who like vehemently did not want to fill out this form? Why do you think that would be?
Well, we just read an interesting thing that was sent around to a lot of the teachers, an article in which the country is so polarized now that students are afraid that if they express the wrong opinion, their friends will cancel them and they'll be judged.
Nail it. I completely agree.
All right, so moving on to our last category, we have day students and boarders. Day students make up 60% of the population, while boarders make up 40%. And we had, out of day students, 79.58% left or liberal ideology, and out of boarding students, we had 75% left or liberal ideology. So how about the population of boarders? How do you think it affects the results that we only have 40% of boarders at the school?
Both are seemingly in the mid to high 70s in their liberal leaning, so I'm not really sure it would really fluctuate all that much.
Also, a number of our disproportionately large number of our boarders come from China, and I'm not sure what sort of political ideology they've been introduced to there. I'm not sure if they're familiar with the idea of political differences in discourse.
I'm not sure if today's American is really familiar
That's
with
true.
political ideologies or discourse. Civilized discourse.
Yes.
All right, our final question today. How can you as a teacher help make the future generation more knowledgeable about politics and just overall understanding how the government works and how to know who to vote for?
Not to toot it, but I think Spivey and I are doing a pretty good job modeling.
Well, we're doing what we can.
Right.
What the point I keep stressing in my government classes is this is all you guys have ever known, this level of polarization. This ain't normal. This is not the way it's supposed to be. This is not the way a democracy can function. You have to be able to find common ground. You have to be able to listen to the other person and at least, entertain their views and hear them. And what we have now is, people getting stuff from social media and confirmation bias by steeping yourself in the media of one side or the other. And I think that's really, really problematic.
Well, thank you very
I
much.
could not agree more, Mr. Spivey. I 100% agree with that. And that's a beautiful way to put it.
All right, thank you both for joining us today. We were very proud to have your opinions both with us. And any final remarks?
No, that's the end. Goodbye.